Hello and welcome to another Sprues and Brews video. Today we are looking at Codex Chaos Daemons for Warhammer 40,000. So first of all I want to say a massive thanks to Games Workshop for sending us a free early review copy ahead of time to have a look at and review for the site. And yeah, I'm really excited for this one. I'm a big Demons player. I collected them back in Warhammer Fantasy and I've got way too many points to think about. And what's quite nice about Demons is that obviously you can use them in games of Age of Sigmar, in 40k, and even the Horus Heresy. Unfortunately for 40k, the previous book came out quite a while ago. I think it's about 4 years old now and came out during the previous edition of the game. So while they did have some kind of patches and updates and alternate profiles and stuff released over the intervening years, you've kind of needed a small library to play Demons, and with a lack of transports and a shooting heavy game, they're often very kind of vulnerable to enemy fire as well. And I'm happy to say in this book a lot of those problems have kind of gone away. There's been a big rework in the way that the army works, a bit of a rework in the way that we'll see demon armies as well. Big hordes of demons are no longer a thing. Lots of kind of like 10-man squads of demons backed up by big greater demons and goodies. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what we see. What's also cool about this book as well is that, I mean, essentially you've got 4 army lists in one. You can do mixed demons, but there is a big benefit for going mono demon. So in this video what we'll do is we'll go through the book, we'll look at what's new, what's changed, what new abilities that the Chaos Demons have, and yeah, check out all the profiles and all the cool stuff like Crusade in the back of here as well. So yeah, I have been looking forward to this one for a long time, and I'm looking forward to putting together a variety of different demon armies using this book. We're planning on doing a big Crusade event towards the latter half of the year, so I think I'm going to be batch painting Bloodthirsters, because they're really good now, in order to get a Crusade force on the go. So yeah, without further ado, shall we crack open the pages of Codex Chaos Daemons and have a look inside. So this really is one of the last few codexes for this edition of the game. After this one, there's not many left really. We know we've got the Leagues of Votann coming. They can't be too far off on the horizon. We know there's a new Astra Militarum book coming, and Warhammer Community have already shared that the World Eaters are coming. After that, I think that is all of the old books up to date, unless we see any, you know, revised edition ones. Space Marines often get multiple codex releases within an edition. Likewise, you know, Necrons are an old one. I don't know if we see a second book for them. Personally, I think we're probably heading towards the next edition of the game at some point in the next, I don't know, 18 months maybe. But hopefully by the end of this year, going into next, we should be in the position where all the factions have got a 9th edition book, so that's pretty exciting. So the opening part of the book, if you've picked up any other 40k codex before, you know the drill. Lots of lore and narrative and information about the forces of chaos, the nature of the various chaos gods. Lots of kind of lore and information, and even some narrative in here as well. There's a couple of like short stories. You've got the war zones that we've seen in previous books as well, kind of detailing an environment that they fight over. So while a lot of this will be familiar to old players, there's enough new stuff in here to make things interesting as well. You know, obviously these war zones we haven't necessarily seen before. We get some narrative around Balakor that we've maybe not seen before. So yeah, always nice to kind of soak this up and kind of get the excitement of the army from the narrative at the start, especially if you're a new player as well. It gives you a bit of a taste into kind of what the army plays like, how it operates, who the various players are. So yeah, whenever I've got temptations to start a new army, I'll often go to Warhammer World, have a look around the kind of exhibition there, check out the miniatures, see kind of what captures me from a model point of view, and then yeah, pick up the codex and have a look through the narrative section and just see if the kind of the story and the background kind of captures my interest. So if you are kind of new to the game, I mean, I do recommend picking these up. The books are good for knowing kind of what your opponent can do, but also for kind of giving you information and kind of richening the lore. And while a lot of us that have been playing the game for longer than we'd like to admit, for new players, you know, You've got, what, 30 odd years, pushing 40 years of history, so it's good to be able to soak that up, kind of summarised in the front of these. As with all the other books as well, we get kind of a miniature showcase as well, with examples of all the painted miniatures from the range, so these were always good to use for painting reference. Obviously, we're in a bit of a different time now, aren't we, with the internet? It's so easy to just see all these images online, but I do like that they still include all the kind of miniature shots in here. But yeah, the thing that most people are going to be interested in now is the rules. A quick aside before we get going. The layout of the book, they've changed a little bit compared to previous 9th edition books. Previously, you'd kind of get your detachment rules and stratagems, and then Crusade would be kind of like shoehorned in there. Then you'd get your kind of datasheet rules and then all the profiles for everything. They've actually moved this around now so that all the kind of army rules are together and then Crusade is at the back, which for me that fits better. It was a bit disjointed in there before in previous books, so with that sat at the back now, that's in a better place, and yeah, we love Crusade, so we'll be seeing that in a bit. But yeah, Codex Daemons, quite a lot has changed here compared to the previous book. So what we'll do is we'll go through those changes, see how that interacts with in the demon army and with other armies as well. One of the things that people were worried about was the summoning mechanic disappearing, and yeah, summoning is gone, but something I think is better has taken its place. So first of all, if you've got a demon detachment, you get access to a number of different abilities. So first of all your troops choices get objectives secured, except for your swarm units. So your Nerglings, for example, don't get objectives secured, because that'd be a bit cheesy if they could just jump forward and take objectives secured on objectives, since they can get into all sorts of places really easily. One thing that is in here is for every greater demon that you take, you can take a herald without taking up a force organisation chart slot, which essentially means you can take 3 greater demons and take 3 heralds in that same detachment without having to have extra HQ slots. So from a list building point of view, that makes it a lot easier to build a demon list without needing multiple detachments. There were some rumours a while ago saying that you're limited to 1 greater demon per detachment. That's bobbins, thankfully. You can take as many greater demons as you can fit in your list, and greater demons are really good. You're going to want to do that. Speaking of greater demons, if there's one in your list, it has to be your general, unless you include Be'lakor, in which case he can be the general. Basically kind of a chain of command thing, the greater demons are going to lead it. It's not going to be a random herald pushing a greater demon around. So again, that makes sense. As with other books as well, if you've got a character and your warlord is in a demon detachment, you can give it relics. Relics are based on the god. As we'll see later through the book, the book's kind of split into multiple books. So there's a book for each god, then a book of Undivided. Each of the 4 main gods has its own kind of warlord traits and relics and stuff, which we'll see in a little bit. So obviously they are fixed to demons of that god, which makes sense. The final kind of detachment ability that we get is really cool, and this interacts with other Chaos armies. Basically, if you take an army, and in that army there's a demon detachment, and the power of all the demons within that detachment is no more than 25% of the power of the total army, you can give that the Agent of Chaos keyword, which normally means it doesn't break any detachment abilities for your other armies, which is really, really cool. It means that you can now take a small detachment of demons alongside your standard force and get access to their, profiles and rules and stuff. Obviously, what you won't get is all the kind of demon rules in here, but it does mean you can take some demons alongside your Chaos Space Marines or your Chaos Knights, for example, which is really fun. Now that's taken a step further with the Demonic Pact ability, where if you take a World Eater's army, you can take a quarter of Khorne demons, take a Thousand Suns army, you can take a quarter of Tzeentch demons, take a Death Guard army, you can take a quarter of Nergal demons, and take an Emperor's Children army, you can take a quarter of Slaanesh demons. And when you do that, the army still counts as being wholly from Thousand Suns, Death Guard, whatever. So if you have any rules that state every model in the army has to be Death Guard, then you still get those abilities. So that's really cool as well. You don't penalise yourself by taking that 25% of demons. I really like this. I was kind of hoping that we'd get this. We've seen some similar stuff with, you know, Chaos Knight being able to be taken in any Chaos army as an agent of Chaos. This kind of doubles down on that and makes mixed Marine and Demon forces a lot easier to do than they have been in the past. So that one gets a massive thumbs up from me. Moving on to the actual kind of like army abilities. Some of this is fairly straightforward. So you've got keywords for each god. You've got some units that are unmarked that can pick a god as well. There's bonuses now to having a pure god army that we'll see in a little bit. That does come into the kind of warp storm that we'll see over the next couple of pages. One new mechanic that's been added to the book is malefic weapons. So these are the kind of, in previous books, the weapon would be like, they've got 9 attacks and they've got a couple of different weapons they can pick from, and then there's one weapon on the profile where they then make an additional 4 attacks with that weapon. Malefic weapons is a way of making that more straightforward and keywording it. So for example, a weapon might have the rule Malefic 4 on it, and that literally just means that as well as the main attacks with their main weapon, they also get 4 additional attacks with that Malefic weapon. Malefic weapons can never be affected by rules that give you extra number of attacks or reduce the number of attacks if an opponent's got a debuff on you. So it's really just a way of kind of making that extra attacks with a different weapon thing into a core rule kind of thing. It wouldn't surprise me if that kind of makes its way into the core rules for other armies as well. I think it's a much neater way of doing it. Another new thing that demons have got is demonic invulnerability. So this is a special save that all demons get. That is 2 different saves baked together. It's technically a normal save, but it cannot be modified. So AP doesn't have any effect on it. It's also technically not an invulnerable save. So any rules that interact with invulnerable saves or do not offer invulnerable saves don't work on this, because it's a demonic invulnerability save, which is something different. Essentially, it gives you 2 profiles. The first one will be the save in melee, and the second will be the save from ranged attacks. Like I said at the start of the video, one of the issues with demons was that they often took quite a lot of fire early on in the game, and you couldn't really get them where they needed to be. This is a way that Games Workshop have managed to fix this by allowing demons to have a better save against shooting than they do in close combat, which is really, really cool. Again, the fact that they can't be modified is brilliant. You don't have to worry about AP or anything, and at the minute you don't have to worry about any abilities that ignore invulnerable saves, because you're fine against that as well. So yeah, demonic saves are going to be a big thing. They might frustrate some players, but it definitely makes demons more likely to hit combat. Generally speaking, the save in close combat is a lot worse than the range save, so it just means that they can weather that firepower till they reach combat, but you have got a better chance of killing them in close combat. Demons also have a demonic terror ability, so if they're within 6 inches of an enemy unit, they reduce their leadership by 1, and it increases combat attritions by 1. Now the way it's worded isn't while they're within 6 inches of any units with this ability. It says this unit. So that rules is written, I think that means that multiple different demon units will cumulatively reduce the leadership of a unit. That possibly needs an FAQ to clarify. It might just be the intent of while they're near a demon, but if it does stack, that opens up some really cool stuff. Which leads me nicely into Manifestation, which is the new, I guess, deep strike mechanic for the demons. Every demon in your force can be set up in the warp instead of on the battlefield. Now standard, that's just normal deep strike. They can come down more than 9 inches away from enemy units. However, there's a few different things that interact with that. There's a rule called Warp Locus that we've seen in the Chaos Space Marines book, and it's on a number of profiles within this book too. And basically, you can come down within 6 inches of a Warp Locus, and then you only have to be outside of 6 inches of enemy units. So you can get a little bit closer to some of those juicy targets, making those kind of out of manifestation charges a lot easier. In addition, if you've got an entirely demon army, so if you're not taking the demons as a allied detachment or something, you get 2 additional deployment options as well. The first of which, you can put them anywhere within your deployment zone outside of 3 inches of enemy units, making it very easy to countercharge a unit that's on your objective in your deployment zone. Alternatively, you can put them anywhere on the board outside of deployment zones, outside of the leadership of enemy units, and that's the current leadership. So if you've got things like Demonic Terror or other abilities that reduce the leadership of units, you can potentially get your demons very close to target. So, random example, because they've got a terrible leadership value, but Gretchen are in a leadership 4. Using this ability, you can deep strike your demons 5 inches, well, outside of 4 inches from Gretchen. If you've got another demon unit nearby them to reduce their leadership by 1, obviously that will reduce an inch as well. So we can see it's very powerful against low leadership units, but even things with leadership 7, leadership 8, you've got enough leadership debuffs to get a couple of inches closer to make it a more reliable charge. So really, really like that. Obviously bear in mind that is just outside of deployment zones as well, which I think is to stop any like turn 2 enemy deployment zone teleports and the like. So yeah, really cool. The final mechanic that the demons have is the Warp Storm charm. So this is a bit of a callback to some of the abilities demons had in previous books for previous editions, where there was a chart of random effects that happened during the game. That's kind of the essence of that has been taken, but it's less random. It's more a resource now that you can spend on different abilities that kick in during the game. So at the start of the battle round, you roll 8 dice, and for each 4+ you get a Warp Storm point. So on average you're going to get 4, but you could get lucky and get 8 of them. There are other ways of gaining Warp Storm points. Ordinarily, at the end of the battle round, you lose them all and then roll again on the next turn. There are also abilities in the book that let you retain some Warp Storm dice as well, so there's some fun stuff you can do. Everybody get access to all the undivided ones, and some of these are really cool. So Dark Invigoration costs 5. Every demon unit in your army gets D3 wounds back, or if it's a unit with a wounds characteristic of 1, D3 models back to the unit. So for 5 Warp Storm points, which is just over average for your Warp Storm table, you basically get to heal the entire army, which is amazing. Primeval Terror, use at the start of the turn. Whenever enemy units are within range of your Demonic Terror, they -1, an additional -1 from the leadership. Again, potentially setting you up for easier manifestations. Music of the Warp is used on units with instruments, and it increases the range of Demonic Terror for 2 Warp Storm points. Malicious Misdirection. Basically this affects the enemy for 2 Warp Storm points. They can only be set up as if it was the second battle round, so a nice one to use late game where they could pop up in other places. You can restrict where they come in from. Magnified Glory for 3 Warp Storm points. You add 3 to the range of all aura abilities. Otherworldly Tread for 2 Warp Storm points. Until the end of the phase, Legion Demonica units from your army can ignore any modifiers to move, advance or charge. Descending Shadow for 3 Warp Storm points. If demons are more than 12 inches away from the attacker, you're -1 to hit. Nice one for 3 Warp Storm points for the first turn of the game. Insidious Whispers, 2 Warp Storm points when an enemy cipher is within 12 inches. Any doubles cause the perils of the warp, rather than double 1 or a double 6. So, really cool. Now, if you have an army that is dedicated just to one god, so Khorne, Nergal, Tzeentch, Slaanesh, you also get an additional 3 abilities tied to that god. So if you do have a mixed army, which is fine, you do miss out on these and you just get the main ones. At minimum, you're going to have those. Most people, I think, will be tying their army to a single god to take advantage of the extra abilities that you get. So for Khorne, you've got Fury of Khorne, gives you army-wide +1 attack for 4 Warp Storm points. Amazing ability. Burning Terror for 2 Warp Storm points. You roll a d6 for each enemy unit within 24 inches. On a 6, they suffer d3 mortal wounds. And then for 4 Warp Storm points, you've got Overwhelming Rage. Use at the start of the opponent's movement phase. Every time an enemy unit with an engagement rage wants to fall back, on a 4+, they can't fall back, so you pin your enemy units in combat. For Nergal, Swarming Insects on 4 Warp Storm points, +1 to attacking melee. Plague of Rust for 2 Warp Storm points, increases your AP against vehicles. And 2 Warp Storm points, Wave of Sickness. You roll for each enemy unit within 12 inches. On a 6, they suffer d3 mortal wounds, so some nice mortal wound splash damage there. For Tzeentch, you've got Deluge of Fire for 4 Warp Storm points. Increases your ballistic skill by 1 for the army. For 3 Warp Storm points, Sorcerous Winds. Use the effect at the start of your psychic phase. Add 1 to a psychic test every time you cast something. And Rampant Mutation for 3 Warp Storm points. Unmodified wounds of 6 inflict a mortal wound on top of any other damage. but it caps at 3 mortal wounds per phase, so you can't go massive unit of horrors, shoots and causes a load of fluky mortal wounds. And then finally for Slaanesh, for 4 Warpstorm points, Mesmerising Dance. Each Slaanesh unit within engagement range can fight first. Now note that is gone as like a kind of demon ability, so it's tied to the Warpstorm ability now. 3 Lightning Speed. When they advance or charge, they add 1 to the result. And finally, Dark Hallucinations for 2 Warpstorm points. When an enemy unit tries to do an action, they're going to do a leadership test on 2d6. If they fail it, the action fails and they take d3 mortal wounds. So really nice one in neutering actions. So as you can see, there's lots of cool abilities there that are going to really, they're going to really kind of affect your playstyle of the army. So the cool thing about this book compared to the previous Demon Codex is that it's split into a number of different books. A book dedicated to each god and a book dedicated to Undivided. So we start off with the Book of Blood, which as you would imagine is all about Khorne. What's good about this is in the previous one they'd kind of split it by kind of HQ, troops, elites. But you had to kind of flick back and forward to try and find, you know, the units you were looking for. Where this one you can just go to the Khorne section and find all the Khorne profiles. A lot easier way of doing it. All the greater demons in the book can be upgraded to exalted greater demons. You pay a points cost and there's a number of different abilities that you can buy for them. So you've got Indomitable Onslaught. A model cannot suffer more than 8 wounds in a single phase, so that stops you from those high ridiculous damage weapons. Master of the Blood Tide. If it charges, was charged or does a heroic intervention, it adds 1 to its strength and attacks, which is pretty cool. And Rage Unchained, it counts as having double the number of wounds when it's working out its profile. So they all cost points to do. You can't have duplicate ones, but if you did have 3 Bloodthirsters in your army, you could give each one a different upgrade if you wanted to. Stratagems are scattered out between the different books. So in the case of Khorne, you've only got 8 here. You've only got 5 here. So in a pure Khorne army, you've only got 5 stratagems that you can use. Personally, I think that's a really good thing. Stratagem bloat has really been a thing recently, and I hope books going forward kind of reduces the stratagems that you need to try and remember and go through. You know, there's some cool stuff within them, but a lot of the stuff that we've seen in War Scrolls, I'd rather just be pointed in as part of the profile, kind of on the data slate. So we also get some warlord traits and relics as well. In each of the books you'll get a list for each god, so you've got quite a lot of customization options. Essentially this is kind of 4 armies in one. So have a quick look at the Khorne ones. Aspect of Death, 6-inch aura, -1 leadership, and an additional -1 from combat attrition. So that will stack on top of your terror rule as well. Brazen Hide has a 5+ wound shrug. Devastating Blow. Rules that ignore wounds cannot be used, so that's really cool. Glory of Battle. Add 1 to their attacks. While it's within 3 inches of 6 or more enemy models, add 1 to its attacks. And then while it's within 3 inches of 11 or more, add 1 to its attacks. So potentially up to 3 extra attacks if it's fighting a large unit. Immense Power, add 1 to Wound, and Rage Incarnate, add 1 to Advance and Charge, and nearby units, add 1 to the charge roll made. So that's pretty cool for core units. We also get some Relics of Khorne. So we'll have a quick look at the profiles. A lot of them, for each god, have had fairly similar updates across the whole kind of like model range for them. So for Khorne, for example, generally speaking, we've got higher strength, we've got more attacks, we hit a bit harder. Scarbrand is an absolute beast. He's now toughness 8, strength 8, 22 wounds. He's a lot tougher than he used to be. He's got a 4+ save in combat and a 4+ save against ranged attacks. He starts with 8 attacks and he still has a +1 attack aura as well, so technically he starts with 9. His attack's really cool. So he'll be hitting at strength 16, AP -4, D3 +3 damage, and invulnerable saves cannot be made against it. So considering he starts with technically 9 attacks there, yeah, Scarbrand will go through anything. Now he's only movement 8, so you can kind of dance away from him, but if you do get within range of him, you want to watch out because he will absolutely smash you to pieces. Bloodthirsters have been consolidated into a single profile. So we used to have different profiles for the different flavours of Bloodthirster, like we did in Age of Sigmar. Now we've got a standard Bloodthirster profile, and the different weapons are basically just upgrades that you can give them now. So that makes life a lot easier. I imagine the reason for doing this is to limit the number of Bloodthirsters you could take in an army. Technically, under the old one, you could take 9 Bloodthirsters. Now you can take a maximum of 3, plus Scarbrand. So yeah, similar to Scarbrand, they're slightly tougher, they've got more wounds. The Great Axe of Khorne is more reliable, so again, hitting at strength 16, AP -4, D3 plus 3 damage. I think previously it did D6 damage, so a lot of things like that have changed. Basically, you give up his Great Axe in exchange for getting some ranged attacks, and some of the ranged attacks are pretty good. The Blood Flail, for example, sort of 12-inch range, Assault 1, hits at strength 16, AP -4, 3d3 damage, and damage over spills. So if you manage to do 9 damage and hit a unit, I don't know, a unit of Eldar with 1 wound each, you could potentially nearly take out the squad because the damage carries over. Alternatively, you can give him the Lash of Khorne, Assault 6, AP -1, 2 damage. So yeah, the ballistical profile never degrades on the Bloodthirster, so it's not a bad idea having those ranged attacks. I do quite like that Blood Flail, but again, it depends what you're fighting. For pure power, you can't go wrong with the Great Axe of Khorne. I guess some people probably want a mixture of them, so we'll go for the old style, one of each different flavour of Bloodthirster. You can still build them that way, just rules-wise, they're still Bloodthirsters. Heralds in general have got a lot tougher, so they've gone up to strength 6. The weapons are nasty now. So strength 6, AP 3, just a flat 3 damage with 5 attacks, will cause a lot of hurt to multiple different units there. They can make a nearby core unit of Bloodletters automatically wound on a hit of 6. Skulltaker's very core now as well, so he can reroll hits and wounds against characters. His sword ignores invulnerable saves as well, so he's pretty cool. Rules wise, the various heralds are very similar. Again, across the board, generally more strength, tougher, more wounds, that kind of stuff. Karanak's pretty nice. So you pick a character at the start of the game. When you wound that character, you just inflict 2 mortal wounds. So really, really good. Considering he comes with 6 attacks, he's hitting on 2 anyway. Yeah, pretty good chance he's going to cause some mortal wounds to a character. So he's a pretty good character assassin. Bloodletters are a first lesser demon choice that we've seen in this book. All of the lesser demons have really had a bit of a rework to make them fit different roles. Bloodletters are very much the Primaris Marine Killers now. Base, strength 5, toughness 4, they get 2 attacks each, hitting at strength 5, AP -3 and a flat 2 damage for murdering Space Marines, which is pretty tasty. Blood Crushers, slightly tougher, slightly more wounds. They take advantage of the better blade that the Bloodletters now have, and the beast it's riding itself does 4 malefic attacks as well, and they hit at strength 7 on the charge, so they're pretty good now as well. For the Bloodletters, they can only be taken up to units of 10, so you can't buy like 20 or 30 of them anymore. It is just a fixed unit of 10, and that's true across all the various lesser demons in this book as well. So your army will look a little bit different, lots of little 10-man squads rather than relying on big blobs of units. Also worth noting, the banners no longer have that roll of 1 and models come back. That's gone, and your leadership's not like amazing, so you do have to be careful from Battle Shock as well. Fleshhounds are pretty good. They can be taken up to 10 in a unit, and the damage 2 on the charge. So again, 10 of these with 3 attacks each can put out quite a bit of damage. They're pretty good at that. The Raw's still pretty good. Pop these up with a manifestation and you're doing what? 10d6 attacks from a big squad. Strength 4, AP -1, 1 damage. That's pretty good. Then charging and do a load more damage afterwards. So quite like Fleshhounds. Skull Cannon still our go-to kind of like high strength weapon. Unfortunately, it's still only AP -2. I'd have liked to have seen that AP -3 or AP -4 to make it a kind of dedicated anti-tank vehicle. It hasn't, unfortunately. It does have a fixed damage 2 now, and it's heavy D3 plus 3, so more reliable in the number of shots that it's getting off, but it's not really an anti-tank kind of gun. I'd have liked to see it a little bit tougher than that. Some of the Tzeentch weapons kind of outdo that really in popping tanks and the like. And then the Skullalt is an interesting one. It's an immobile transport for a Herald. They can get in it and do a special action, and basically you roll a d6 for every Khorne unit within 12 inches. Each 4+ gives you a Warp Storm point. So that's really good for giving you more points to use some of those abilities that we saw earlier. My only concern with it, with a range of 12 inches, realistically a lot of your units are going to be kind of scouting out of range of it during the game. But I think it's 50 points off the top of my head, giving you a couple of abilities that you can use turn 1 with as additional Warp Storm points. And if things are going wrong, you can always pull the army back towards it to try and get the kind of the 5 Warp Storm point heal off to fix them all up, is another potential tactic that you've got. So yeah, I need to try it in some games, that one, to see how effective it is. We then get to the Book of Change, which, as you would imagine, features all the Tzeentch units in the book. The Tzeentch on the whole have, they're very much your magical gunline army. They're very resilient to shooting as well. Pretty much every Tzeentch unit has a 3+ demonic save against ranged attacks, which is really, really good, considering these units are wanting to sit back, shoot things and cast powers. Makes them a bit more resilient to being shot. You're going to have to close the distance and do some damage to them in combat if you want to take them down. So that's pretty cool. Like with the Bloodthirsters, the Laws of Change can take a number of different exalted abilities too. So Architect of Deception, each time a ranged attack is made, subtract 1 from the hit roll. Master Mutator, at the end of your psychic phase, roll a d6 for each enemy unit that suffered any mortal wounds. On a 2+, they suffer an additional mortal wound. And then Nexus of Fate, if it's on the battlefield in the command phase, you get a command point on a 4+. So again, some pretty good abilities. Like last time, you would have paid some points to get them. Again, we get a range of stratagems and warlord traits and relics. We also get the Pandemonium Discipline. We'll have a quick look at the spells on here because there's some cool stuff. So Boon of Change, which is a random blessing. It goes off on a 6. You roll a d3 and you either give them +2 move, +1 strength or +1 toughness. If it goes off on a 9, you can select which one you have, which is pretty cool. Bolt of Change, you roll 9d6, and for each 5+, you take a mortal wound, and then each model that's destroyed as a result of the mortal wounds causes an additional mortal wound. So kind of like cascading mortal wounds on them, which is pretty nice. Gaze of Fate is a way of retaining 2 Warp Storm points at the end of the battle round. Normally you lose all the ones that you've not spent, so with Gaze of Fate you can lock in a couple for next turn to get a decent ability off that you want to get. Treason of Tzeentch basically shuts down aura abilities for enemy units. Infernal Flames gives a unit +1 to wound for its ranged attacks. And then Infernal Gateway, again, is some more mortal wound shenanigans. So a few causes of damage and a few cool kind of buffs and abilities on here too. Moving on to the profiles, like with Khorne, we see some fairly universal changes across the Tzeentch force. A lot of the stuff is a lot better at shooting now, a lot more reliable at shooting. The greater demons have got more wounds, so a bit more resilient. Like I say, pretty much all the Tzeentch stuff's got a 3+ save against shooting, so you're going to have to close the distance on them if you want to cause some damage to them, so that may cause some headaches for the enemy army. Kairos Fate Weaver's got some cool abilities. He's got a 1-use only ability where if your opponent plays a stratagem, for the rest of the game it costs +1 command points in order to use that stratagem again, so that's pretty cool. They're all really good at magic, pretty cool, really like them. He's got the Warp Locus ability, which Scarbrand also has, so you can use him as a bit of a focal point for bringing in your demons. All of the Heralds are now surprisingly good at shooting now. The staffs generally hit on strength 7, AP -4, 2 damage, and have 3 shots each, so they're really good at taking out characters, Primaris Marines. With AP -4 and strength 7, they can put some threat on tougher targets as well. So yeah, they're pretty good. I quite like them. You've got various abilities that makes hits of 6 automatically wound. One of them does it on ranged attacks, the other one does it on melee attacks. Changeling very similar, Blue Scribes very similar. Horrors have had a big rework, so you no longer have to put a points aside for when they split. That's now baked into the rules itself. So start with a unit of 10 pinks. Each time a pink dies on a 4+, 2 blue horrors get added to the unit. Each time a blue horror dies on a 4+, a brimstone horror gets added to the unit. They've all got the same profile for their guns, so 18 inches, assault 2, strength +1, AP -1 damage, which is pretty cool. You can also buy for less points just a unit of blue horrors as a troop choice as well, so that's a good option if you want to do a quite elite force and just have a few cheap blobs of blue horrors as your kind of like troops choices. So it's nice that you get the option of both. Again, you can't buy like 20-30 pink horrors anymore. Again, that was never fun from a tar pit point of view. And again, I think it's just the way they've kind of re-envisioned this army as quite an elite one. So lots of small units that all kind of interact with each other. Flamers were really nice. 12-inch range of the guns, assault D6 +3, strength 5, AP -2. They also hit because they're flamers. There's a stratagem where they get 9 attacks each. So a unit of 6 of these, each of them getting 9 strength 5, AP -2 flames. Really, really horrific unit. They're really quick as well at 12 inches and can fly. They're very good. Exalted Flamers similar, but you've got a bit of a choice between the kind of anti-tank gun, which is more anti-tank than the Khorne one. Essentially it's strength 9, AP -4, 3 damage, assault 3. So again, you can put out quite a lot of damage with that, or alternatively you can go for the kind of like torrent kind of ability. With the stratagem, 6 flamers I think possibly better, but this one you have got the functionality of that high strength one to deal with things. Screamers are still really cool. They still move over things and do mortal wounds. I think they used to be better against vehicles. They're just strength 6, AP -3, 2 damage now, which is still good, but more so against things like marines, custodies, kind of high armour, high toughness things. These can really chew through now. Burning Chariot's essentially an exalted flamer that moves faster. So yeah, they're pretty cool. Nergal has had a bit of a change as well. So this is the Book of Contagion. A lot of their abilities are now about reviving models, bringing things back. So while disgustingly resilient as a rule has kind of gone, we still have abilities in here to keep those Nergal forces ticking along. There's quite a few ways of bringing models back and keeping them in the fight, and a lot of stuff is a lot tougher and has more wounds than it used to as well. Great Unclean Ones can have one of 3 different exalted upgrades if they want to as well. So Bountiful Gifts. At the end of each battle round, you can retain up to 2 unspent Warp Storm points, which is really, really good. Hideous Visage. When an enemy unit is within 6 inches, subtract 1 from the leadership characteristic of models in the unit, and subtract 1 from combat attrition. Again, that's on top of their normal kind of terror rule. And then Revoltingly Resilient. Each time a melee attack is made against this model, subtract 1 from the damage. So again, that can make those Great and Clean Ones very, very tanky. So yeah, some fun stuff. We do get a spell discipline for them, the Warp Rot discipline. So Stream of Corruption, the close enemy within 12 inches suffers D3 mortal wounds. If it's got 11 or more, it's D3 +2 mortal wounds. Fleshy Abundance, select a friendly Nergal core unit within 18 inches, add 1 to their toughness. Now considering Plague Bearer is a toughness 5 base, that's very scary. Nergal's Rot, if the result is higher than the toughness characteristic of models in the unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. If the result is at least double the highest toughness, it suffers D6 mortal wounds instead. So basically you pick a unit, goes off on a 7, you roll 2d6, you're trying to kind of either beat the toughness or double their toughness to do a load of mortal wounds to them. So against things like, I don't know, something that's pretty hard to chew through but has a low toughness, that'll be fairly easy to do. Toughness 3 stuff on average, you're doing those D6 mortal wounds to it, so pretty good spell. Shivering Pox, there's a warp charge of 6, select an enemy unit within 18 inches. At the start of your psychic phase, subtract 1 from the toughness characteristic of models in the unit. Virulent Blessing goes off on a 6, select a Nergal core unit within 18 inches, and still the start of the next psychic phase, add 1 to the damage characteristic of melee weapons, again pretty nasty. And Melodious Paw, it's a warp charge of 8, select an enemy unit within 18 inches, and then that unit cannot perform actions and it loses objective secured. So again, Really, really good one. So yeah, again, a lot of this stuff, we've got more toughness, more wounds now. Rotigus clocking toughness 9 and 24 wounds. He's going to be hard to chew through. He's got an aura, friendly Nergal core within 6 inches, reroll hits of 1. He's got some pretty good attack profiles too. Yeah, he's pretty cool. Obviously, Nergal's thing is more resilient, so it's more about the toughness and the wounds you got to chew through with this guy. The Great Unclean One's had a bit of a rework. Again, toughness 9 and 22 wounds. A lot of his other upgrades have got more kind of utility abilities now as well. So the Bile Blade, he can take a mortal wound in order to increase one to his psychic test. What I can see a lot of people taking though is the Doomsday Bell. So in the command phase, you select friendly core Plague Bearers unit within 12 inches. Return 1 destroyed model from the unit with its 4 wounds remaining. If it's an infantry unit, so you've kind of Plague Bearers troops choice, you return D3 destroyed models instead. And they've got 2 wounds each now as well, so that's pretty cool. Might be confused with the Plague Bearers core. I think the flies have got the core keyword, so with the bell you can return a unit to them as well. So pretty good way of getting the models back. There are a few other things within the Nergal section that can return models to units too, so pretty good. The Poxbringer, basically wounds of 6 do an additional damage, which is pretty good, and they can reroll wounds of 1 for nearby Nergal core. The Spoilbox Scrivener, in your command phase you select a friendly Plague Bearers core unit. Until the start of your next command phase, each time a model in the unit makes a melee attack, add 1 to the hit roll, and if it gives it objective secured, and if it already has it, each model counts as 2 models. So again, this is a pretty good guy for kind of getting objectives and the like. Epidemius is still on the book, similar kind of thing. A lot of the kind of tiers of different abilities that he had is gone. Instead, he keeps the tally, and once he reaches 7, after making a Warp Storm roll, you gain an additional Warp Storm point and reset the tally to 0. So basically he just kind of generates Warp Storm points now, so not quite as fun as he used to be. I'm surprised he's still in it because he's a very old model. I was kind of expecting him to be discontinued, so happy he still exists. And then the Slopsty Bowpiper, he picks a Great Unclean One, Nurglings or Plague Bearer core. You add 1 to the move, advance and charge rolls for them. You can reroll wounds of 1, and he can also kind of debuff enemy unit. They lose objective secured and they cannot perform actions, so that's pretty handy for kind of like game control. Horticulus Slimemox, very similar. He's toughness 7 with 9 wounds now, which I think is slightly better. His Acidic Maw, strength 7, AP -4, 3 damage, so 2 extra attacks with that with Malefic 2 is pretty good. For Beasts and Nergal and Plague Drones, they can reroll charges and add 1 to their hit rolls, and Beasts and Nergal are pretty cool now. And he can make enemy units treat area terrain as if it had difficult ground, and every time an enemy unit tries to end a move within it, on a 2+, they take D3 mortal wounds. So basically kind of, for want of a better word, kind of trap pieces of scenery, which is pretty cool. Plague Bearers have had a bit of an upgrade. Obviously disgustingly resilience gone, but in its place they've got toughness 5 and 2 wounds each, so they're going to be pretty hard to chew through now. Nurglings are still annoying. You can set them up anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches away from enemy models. They can't fill any compulsory slots, and I think they used to have a rule where they healed up to full if you didn't kill them. That's gone now. That rule, however, is now on the Beasts of Nergal. So they're toughness 6, 7 wounds, absolutely horrific with 6 attacks, AP -2, 2 damage, with a hit of 6 doing 2 mortal wounds. Yeah, they're pretty cool. If you don't kill one, it heals up. So you have to pour a load of damage onto a Beast of Nergal to take it out. I guess the only thing going against them, they're only movement 6, they're not the fastest. Weapon skill's not great, but again, take Horticulus Slimemox with them, they'll hit a little bit harder. I really like these guys, I think they're going to be fun. Plague Drones are Plague Bearer core, so you can bring back Plague Drones using the bell on the Great Unclean One as well. So considering their toughness 6 and 5 wounds each, that's a pretty good use of that bell. And movement 10, one of the quicker Nergal units as well. Yeah, I think these guys are pretty good. And then finally the Feculent Gnarlmaw is the scenery piece. I forget how many points this one is. I want to say 50, but don't quote me on that. If enemy units within engagement range, there's a chance that they can take mortal wounds. You can set it up anywhere on the board that's 9 inches away from the opponent's deployment zone. And it also has a bit of an aura ability where you roll 7d6, and for each 6 you return a destroyed model to a Plague Bearer infantry core unit within 6 inches. So basically you use these to regenerate your Plague Bearer unit. So a couple of these and the bell, and even though you've not got a Discussing Resilient and you can only take 10 models in the squad, you've still got a good way of keeping those units of Plague Bearers alive and on objectives. Take the kind of abilities that we've seen in other units to make those Plague Bearers count as 20 models, and again you've got a long war of attrition with your opponent, so that's pretty cool. We then have the Book of Excess. This is the Slaanesh book. Again, like with the other Great Demons, we've got some upgrades. So Diaphanous Panoply, each time a ranged attack is made against the model, subtract 1 from the wound roll. Epicurean of Agonies, every time the model makes a melee attack, an unmodified hit of 6 scores an additional hit. And Insatiable Onslaught, add 2 to advance and charge rolls, so pretty cool. We also get the Soul Strain Discipline, which is a psychic discipline for them. The good old Cacophonic Choir is back. Roll 3d6, the closest enemy unit within 18 inches suffers a mortal wound for each point that exceeds their leadership. However, it is to a maximum of 6, unfortunately. Symphony of Pain goes off on a 7, select an enemy unit within 18 inches. Until the start of the next psychic phase, each time a melee attack is made, subtract 1 from the hit and wound roll. Hysterical Frenzy goes off on a 7, select a Slaanesh core unit within 18 inches, add 1 to the attack's characteristic, and each time it makes a melee attack, a hit of a 6 does an additional hit, so that's really cool, exploding hits. Delightful Agonies goes off on a 6, select a core unit within 18 inches until the start of the next psychic phase. Every time they suffer a wound on a 5+, that wound is not lost, so basically discussing resilient and your Slaanesh stuff. Purveying of Slaanesh goes off on a 6, select an enemy unit within 18 inches, roll a d6 for each model in the unit, each 5+ does a mortal wound to a maximum of 6. It's a shame the maximums on some of these because they have got some potentially big spiky damage, but I guess that's why they put the limits in. And Phantasmagoria goes off on a 7, select an enemy unit within 18 inches, roll 6d6 for each 5+ to take a mortal wound. Until the start of the next psychic phase, each time the unit suffers a mortal wound, subtract 1 for their leadership, so that's really good. Again, you could potentially use that to set up deep striking in some demons as well. And again, we get some warlord traits and some relics. Looking at the profiles, Shalaxi Hellbane's awesome. Hellishly quick at movement 16, hitting on 2s, 22 wounds, only 6 attacks. However, she's hitting at what? Strength 12, AP -4, 3 damage. Attacks against characters are damage D3 + 3. She's -1 to hit. She's -1 to wound. It can heroically intervene 6 inches. It's yeah, it's pretty cool. You can upgrade it with the shield to give it a 4+4+ save, so it's a little bit tougher in close combat as well. Snapping Claws are Malefic for another 4 attacks, AP -4, 3 damage. I quite like her, she's fun. Again, she's got the Warp Locust keyword as well, so you can deep strike units near her. Vanilla Keeper of Secrets, similar kind of profile really. So with the Wit Stealer Sword, each time an enemy model loses wounds as a result of an attack until the end of the battle, each time that model makes a melee attack, subtract 1 from the wound roll, which is pretty good. So yeah, basically they can make the opponent worse at fighting. Infernal Enrapturous is quite a fun one. Obviously you've got 2 different shots. One of them is kind of like an anti-tank, strength 9, AP -3, D3 + 3 damage 1, or you've got the Assault 6, kind of lots of slightly weaker shots, but it's still strength 5, which is pretty good. Why you want to take her though is some of the cool abilities that she's got. So nearby Slaanesh core can reroll wounds of 1. She can make enemy psychers within 24 inches do Perils of the Warp on a double rather than a 1 or a 6. And Harmonic Alignment. You select a friendly core Slaanesh unit from within 6 inches. You can return 1 destroyed model to the battlefield. If it's an infantry squad, you can heal D3. So considering you could take one of these for each Keeper of Secrets that you could take 3 of them, I think they're like 80 points each, they're not expensive, and have them kind of advancing up with your Demonettes and just keep bringing back models every turn. So yeah, I think she's pretty cool. Celeste's pretty cool. A lot of attacks. You've got Malefic 6 on the whip. So strength 4, AP minus 2, 1 damage. And then 6 attacks at strength 7, AP minus 3, 3 damage. Lets nearby units reroll hits of 1 and wounds of 1. Contorted Opossumi can basically force a unit, if they fail a leadership test on 3d6, to half their movement and -1 from hit roll. So a nice kind of, I guess, debuff unit that you've got. A lot of the chariots are really cool now. They're very quick. They get a lot of attacks. They've got some cool impact hits and stuff. You've got +1 to hit for your nearby Slaanesh Demonette core units as well. It's -1 to hit the chariots. They've all got similar rules, but obviously as they get bigger chariots, you've got more wounds, more different abilities on them. I think they're pretty fun. Demonette's really a nice unit now as well. Lots of attacks and very fast. Movement 10, 4 attacks each, strength 4, AP minus 2, 1 damage. Pretty horrific. It's nice that all the core units have now got different kind of like quirks and different things that you go for. You'll be able to build some quite different looking armies across the 4 of them, which is nice. Fiends are similar. I think they're slightly tougher, more wounds. The Malefic one, Barb Tail attack's pretty cool. Strength 5, AP minus 3, 3 damage, and then they've got their basic 4 attacks at strength 5, AP minus 2, 2 damage. Units with an engagement range of -1 to hit, and there's quite a lot of hit shenanigans within the book as well, so you can really make it quite difficult for the enemy units to hit you back. Seekers are really good. They're fast, 16 inches, 4 attacks each, 2 wounds. Other than that, similar profile to the Demonettes, but they get an additional 2 Malefic attacks from the mount as well. They add 1 to charge. They no longer run in charge though, but I mean, they're moving 16 inches anyway. They're going to get where they need to get. Then we've got the kind of non-exalted versions of the non-character versions of the chariots. Similar kind of profiles to them. They're quite cool. I've got a lot of chariots. I'm going to try making a bit of a chariot force because I think that'd be quite fun. Finally, we get to the Book of the Warp. This is all of the unmarked stuff, including Be'lakor. So yeah, Be'lakor's very, very good. He was good before. He's even better now. I think he's gone up in wounds. He's now, you can't reroll hits. You're -1 to hit and wound, and you're -1 damage. I think he was only -1 to hit before, so I think he's even better in that regard now. Yeah, he's a bit of a beast. You can't include other demon princes in the list if he's in your army. I mean, you wouldn't take another demon prince, would you? You'd just take Be'lakor, because he's amazing. I think he's the most expensive kind of greater demon level creature in the book, but he is really, really good. Just the fact that for the -1 to hit, -1 to wound, can't reroll, and -1 damage, he's toughness 7 with 20 wounds. It's going to be really hard to chew through him. So yeah, he's pretty ace. We then get the generic greater demon prince. Similar profile to what we used to have. I do wonder if we'll get a new profile when the new models come out for Age of Sigmar, because they do look bigger and more impressive. I do wonder if we'll see something more in line with like a mini greater demon stat line, kind of based on what Be'lakor looks like. Sword Grinders are pretty good now. We've got some decent anti-tank now. Phlegm Bombardment, heavy D6, strength 8, AP -2, 3 damage blast. And then the Harvester Cannon, heavy 6, strength 7, AP 1, damage 2. The Claw makes him hit at strength 16, AP -3 and D6 damage. And then he's got some Malefic hits on top of that as well. So yeah, pretty cool that. Toughness 8, 16 wounds as well. They'll tank a bit more damage than they used to, so they're pretty fun. We then get the Disciples of Be'lakor Army of Renown in here as well. So if you've played the one previously from the supplement book, similar kind of situation here. You can have Chaos Space Marines and Demons within the same detachment. You're not allowed to take any Greater Demons. You're not allowed to take any Chaos Knights unless you take one House Korvax one, which is Be'lakor's Knight household. You're restricted to not taking any World Eaters, Thousand Suns, all the kind of like core demon related ones. Other than that, for army construction, you have to take one of each mark of God before you can take any more. So you've got quite a lot of restrictions, but you get some cool abilities for it though. Basically, units outside of 12 inches, it's -1 to hit. And each time a combat attrition test is taken, you add 1 to the result. So there's some good benefits, but there are some restrictions in how you build the list. There's nothing to stop you taking Be'lakor outside of a Disciples of Be'lakor though, so you can just take him as a HQ choice in any demon army. Just bear in mind you can't take any demon princes if you did that, but you're probably not going to anyway. So finally we get to the Crusade section, and like I said, this has now been moved to the end of the book. It's not so kind of disjointed in the middle of the rules section, which is really good. The Crusade rules for the demons are really fun. Basically, it represents the battle between the 4 Chaos Gods. Over the course of 8 games, you'll calculate the rise and fall of those different rivalries. So you'll see maybe Khorne ascendant at first, and then maybe Nergal becomes ascendant, and based on the position of the 4 gods battling, you get access to a number of different rewards that you can claim. So that's pretty fun. In the back of the book you actually get like a chart as well, where you can record kind of the position of all the gods, so that's really fun. You also get some locusts as well. So this is something that we saw in the previous Demon book and doesn't actually exist in the kind of main match play rules, but it's come back here. So basically it's a new battle honour that you can give to your greater demons or your heralds, and they've got different abilities they can do. So Khorne, for example, they can do an additional 3-inch consolidation move. For Tzeentch you've got, for example, a 6+ wound shrug. For Nergal, reroll charge rolls. For Slaanesh, you can charge even if you advance that turn. So you get 2 of them for each god, and again adds a little bit of flavour. You know, over the course of a Crusade campaign you're getting different abilities and stuff, and this lets you kind of maybe get a bit of a background and give a name to that herald since he's got this special ability. Quick look at the Great Game. So essentially this will start Khorne, Tzeentch, Nergal, Slaanesh, and then based on the results of your games and then just a natural kind of D3 roll for each of them, they'll move around. That will keep continuing for 8 games. At the end of the 8 games you then work out the position of the 4 gods. So the higher they sit on this scale, the greater rewards that they get, down to the poor person in kind of 4th place who gets nothing. And based on where your god's units fall on that scale allows you to buy different favoured rewards. So it's quite cool that. It's now obviously most people will be playing with a mono god army, but because it's still all the other gods are moving on a D3 roll anyway, you're probably going to be ahead of that scale, but you never know, you could be unlucky. Obviously if you've got a mixed army you might want different gods to kind of come to the top of that leaderboard. So yeah, it's pretty fun. I quite like that. It's adds a bit of flavour. Obviously you get your normal kind of upgrades and battle traits and Crusade relics and all that kind of stuff that you can normally take anyway. Yeah, like I say, I'm going to be using these as part of a Crusade force that we're doing at the end of the year. So I think we'll probably be doing some website content and some videos on that too. So I'll probably do a video of building together this Crusade army and seeing how they get on. Like with the previous books as well, you do get some examples of some of the studio armies as well for inspiration. So before we finish off, I'll just flick forward to the bit that everyone will want to kind of print screen of on this one. The points values, not too bad. I mean, they're going to be quite elite, let's face it, demon armies. You're going to have your squads, they're fairly fixed, aren't they? Like your plague bearers are 150 points for 10 models. There's no buying 20 or 30 of them. So it'll be a case of buying your core units, probably a couple of greater demons, some supporting heralds that you can fit in, and then fill it with all the other fun stuff as well. So most people with an existing demon army will have no problem. That'll fit in straight away. If you've got lots of big units, obviously you're not going to use them, but instead you could maybe run lots of little units of demons too. It keeps them back, teleport them into the battlefield when your kind of locust units get further up. There's some fun stuff you can do. Like I said, Bellicor's expensive at 420 points, but he is very, very strong. Scarbrand is, I think, a bargain at 330. He is an absolute beast. So yeah, pretty cool. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this new codex. I have been playing demons for years and years and years now, and I'm excited to be able to use them more competitively in games of Warhammer 40,000. The warp table's really good, being able to spend those abilities. Yes, you've got a bit of a random element in that you might not necessarily have the warp charge that you need to get the abilities off, but there's enough special abilities and spells and stuff that can help you carry over warp storm points to make it a little bit more reliable. Biggest change for me is the demonic saves. It's going to make the demon armies so more reliable really, and tougher to get through. Being able to weather more firepower at range is a big change for the demons. That's going to make them a lot more fun to play, I think. And because that save isn't set all the time, and it's actually lesser in combat, it also means that your opponent's going to want to close the distance and start smashing them as well. So yeah, really, really fun book. Like I say, I'm going to do a crusade for these later on in the year, so we'll probably put together a video and a post on how I've built that. So, you know, stay tuned for that content coming. Until next time, we've got a couple of videos up to date on the site as well. We've got unboxings of the Possessed and the Accursed Cultists, both really, really nice kits. I've built and painted them up, and they're in the video as well. So if you are interested in them, check them out. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. If you have, we do lots of kind of unboxings and reviews and stuff like this, so why not give us a subscribe if you are interested. We've also got companion articles for all of these reviews over on the website, spruesandbrews.com, so it'd be amazing if you could check that out too. But yeah, until next time, hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.